Meeting to order, 5:30, August 14th, the Real Estate Facilities and Land Management Meeting. The approval for February 13th, 2018 minutes.
So moved.
I'll make the second.
Wake up.
Any changes or anything?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
I don't think I was there, was I?
That's the last real estate
good.
one.
I think you were.
You can still vote. You can.
I'll say aye.
Committee.
All right, we'll move straight in. We got the Farm Center update. Mr. Stanley Gibson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to come back and give you an update on where things are moving as far as the Farm Center is concerned. We are kind of getting into the nitty-gritty now, getting ready for the fair coming up the end of September. So we're hustling out there trying to get everything finished up and spruced up, and power and water and roads and all of that. So we're moving forward with that. I do want to catch up some with some of what we have been up to. A $12,000 grant and private investment has allowed us to move the market building from the old site to the new site. We had to purchase some additional steel and redo the legs on it and stuff because it was set in concrete, and you don't move those like that and be able to use the metal again. So we're able to do that. We've had the adventure of putting the plastic on, and we'll get to do that again because the wind caught it the first time and decided to lay it over on the side. So we're going to do that as soon as we get a nice day that we can get out there and get the lifts lined up and the people lined up to do a recovering there. We also were able to purchase some signs to put out to help folks get to the market and locate us since we've moved to the new location there. We did get off to a slow start this year between moving the building and the weather. It was real slow, especially for the produce growers, but it has picked up since then. We've had rain, we've had cold, we've had about everything as a grower that you don't want right now, but we do have an average of about 327 folks on every Saturday. We average 178 on the Friday evenings. That's the second and fourth Friday of each month. There's about 14 regular vendors that we've had, and then 2 to 3 seasonal vendors, depending on what's coming in their garden and what they need to get rid of. They'll come out. I guess the main event so far this year, as far as the market, other than just the weekly markets, was the Friday night before the 4th of July. We did a fireworks show and had a market there, and had over 1,000 people that showed up for that. So it was a huge turnout. So we really like that. And then just a couple of weeks ago, we had the Dog Days event at the market. There we teamed up with the Seneca Animal Hospital and the Oconee Humane Society. Had over 500 people that came. Several dogs got adopted. So, you know, a win-win situation there for sure. We've also sponsored 2 beginner canning classes, one on fruits and one on pickles. Clemson Extension taught that. We hosted a workshop on building rain gardens. That was just this past weekend, looking at water conservation, things that we can do as homeowners to help take care of that resource that we have. One of the other things we've been able to do, Katie, if you'll move to the little round to it, Sarah. One more. There we go. At the beginning of the year, we handed these out when they were handing out the vouchers. And thanks to the grant, we've been able to distribute over $2,600 in these little tokens here that our seniors can bring into the market and use to buy produce on top of the regular voucher that they've got. So that's been a real hit for us and something that we're real proud of. In late April, we had the high school rodeo event there. We did enough to be able to host that event. It was very successful. We had over 900 people that paid to get in, and for a high school rodeo, that's a good crowd there. There were over 160 youth participants, and when they come in for that high school rodeo, they just don't show up in a car and do it. They bring their trailers and their horses and everything. I mean, they move in for the weekend. And so we had a crowd of folks there all over the fairground. Matter of fact, it did so well that we're also going to have the high school rodeo at the fair this year. And that's a wonderful thing unless you're the one that's trying to lay out where everybody's supposed to be. And then it gets to be a bit of a headache. So we're still working on that, but if the weather doesn't mess us up, I think we'll be in good shape on that. As far as the Farm Center itself is concerned, we are in the process. I think we're getting real close now to being able to launch our website. It will be farmoconee.org, and it will include the fair page and the farmer's market page. So it'll all be one central location that folks can go to find out what's going on at the farm center. Also, it will allow us to accept donations online. So we're looking forward to getting that up. And in conjunction with that and with the fair, we're going to be kicking off our capital campaign and looking at ways that we can get some funds coming in there so that we can start moving forward on what we need to do to reach our ultimate goal there. We've spent a lot of time here in the last couple of months on redoing our logo. Of course, roads, culverts, spraying for insects and weeds and such out there, getting the Midway area prepped, the arena. We are in the process of putting up the permanent arena now. We've got the lights in. We've been fighting with those here the last couple of weeks, trying to get those to run correctly, but I think we've about got that nailed down now. But thanks to some private donations as well as a lot of in-kind donations from folks in the community, we've been able to move forward. Once the website is launched, we will be looking forward to meeting with people, getting out, trying to do some education as far as what the Farm Center is all about. It's amazing when I go out, either I'm speaking to vendors or just people in general that have no clue as to what we're doing out there. And so we've got a lot of educating to do to get folks to understand what we've got, what we're trying to end up with out there. And here you see the one rendering that we have here of kind of what we're looking for as what we want to see out there at the Farm Center. You know, a nice state-of-the-art facility that will allow us to do things in Oconee County rather than having to farm out to our neighboring counties to have different events. So that kind of catches you up on where we are. I hope that you'll be able to come out to the fair this year at the end of September. If you haven't been to the market, please take a Saturday morning and cruise by there and see what's going on. Any questions that you might have?
Well, thank you for coming. Thank you for all the volunteers. I know a lot of that out there is volunteers, if not all of it is. I know
There's a lot of sweat equity involved, that's for sure.
There's been a lot of good partnerships with, that y'all have accomplished to get the high school rodeo on. And I attended it and enjoyed it. And, I think people need to practice parking is probably your biggest thing. That
Yeah, we'll have that a little bit better under control when we get the fair.
It wasn't y'all that needed to practice parking. It was the ones parking but it's nice to see a big area out there because it worked for something like that. There's a lot of people out there, and my assistant at my office did the canning class and just absolutely enjoyed and loved it. So
Wonderful.
And I enjoyed what she made. So, but
Good deal.
no, thank you for. What are the dates for everything again?
The 25th through the 29th
Okay.
will be the fair. And we hope to be able to have some events in the arena as soon as we get it all finished up. Fingers crossed that'll be by the end of the week. We should be able to roll with it.
October 25th?
September.
September 25th.
It's
So
here.
we're getting close. Anything else?
Well, I just wanted to make mention, the South Carolina Upstate Equine Council, of which I'm a member of, tends to give out small grants for advertising purposes or whatever you're doing. So if there's something you need, let me know so I can put in a
Count on
word.
it. We'll certainly do that.
We
Yeah, that's
had
that'll be wonderful.
a successful spring horse show at the Garrison Arena that brought in a good amount of money, and we turn around and give it away essentially to various organizations that sponsor mostly equine events, but also
Right.
to veterinary hospitals and whatnot. But if you had something specific, like you wanted to put an ad for a specific event, I could probably get you some money for that.
Okay. Well, one of the couple of things we're doing before the high school rodeo during the week, we're going to have the 4-H'ers here. We're going to have a 4-H horse show on one day, and then they're going to do barrel racing.
Well, you
on
see,
one of the
that
other
would be a
nights.
classic example of an event that other organizations, fill out the tiny little application they require asking us for funds.
Okay.
So don't miss out on that.
No, thank you so much for letting us know. We'll do that. And thanks, everybody, for your support. We do appreciate it.
All right, we'll move on to the asbestos removal from the Fairplay School. We had a study at the request of council Terracon did a study, and one of the things I was discussing with Mr. Martin on is, and Mr. Root identified that this was quite possibly just the cafeteria area, it was not the entire, school. But obviously, based on the study that will be, Katie, is that added in our backup material? The study, that's what I thought, okay. For those that are listening or out there, the study will show there is a lot of asbestos inside, which is the majority of the cost to abate any kind of structure or tear it down. So what my recommendation would be is that even though this is just the cafeteria, I think a bidding process could just show what it would cost for the study. I'd hate the study go to waste if it was only the cafeteria, but that was quite possibly what the order to Terracon was. But my request, I guess I'll make that in form of a motion, would be to have Mr. Martin send that out to a few abatement companies to properly bid that abatement process.
Second.
One thing you need to consider, according to this study, they said a lot of stuff was in the crawl space. They didn't know exactly how much, according to this, when I read this thing. Crawl space is gonna require additional cost to confined space entry. And that's gonna affect the cost. Also, one thing I noticed in this thing, they were reporting, they're worried about the 3 or 4 AA batteries above the door. I think that was a little overboard. We need to find out also, of a lot of that roofing material in the build-up roof. I noticed they didn't core the roof. They just climbed on top and looked at the roof. They didn't core to see what was between the roof and the metal. So we don't know whether that's mat, asbestos-based mat or not.
No, sir, we don't. That's something that, I'm sure they would tell us once they got started. But now, we could probably ask Terracon to go back and do that, if that's something y'all would like to
Well,
have.
I'm not trying to run a call, I'm just saying, if we get say we let it out on bid, and they start to tear the school down, they say, oh, by the way, we found this much more, and we want extra money for this, and now we take the top layer of the mastic off the roof, and now before we find the mat, which was common used in that time era for construction against the F deck, then would they be jacking us up for even more money? Because you got to haul it you got to haul it to Pendleton to bury it.
Either it has to go to Anderson or to Homer, unless we can get it bagged enough to put it in our own landfill.
Oh, you think we could bag it?
Well, it all depends on how big it is and how they take it out.
So
If it's bagged properly, we can take it in our own landfill.
So if they remove it by wet process, we could take it to our own landfill?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right. Okay, well, thank you.
Well, sir.
I guess still in the discussion of this, the interesting thing about the cafeteria was the one thing that I thought they said they wanted to save, and I know we've discussed that as well. And it was interesting that we did the study on the cafeteria, but it is what it is. But I think it's not gonna cost us anything to bid out an abatement process of it, and, at least start to understand what we're up against, because I imagine, whatever the cost is to abate the cafeteria, the structure itself would cost probably 3 times that based on the size of it.
I would say that's a good.
I think there's 2 wings, 2 additional wings, so it's an L wing. Maybe it's not, because it doesn't have the style roof on it, I'm not sure. But that way we as a council could make a decision on if this is something we're wishing to pursue, rather than the guesstimate that I've heard, and I know Ms. Kamick mentioned it as well in a meeting that we had with Fair Play Area, around $200,000 to abate and remove the structure. So.
In the morning, I'll get our procurement department, and we'll see if we can get something together, get this started.
Okay. All right, got a motion and a second.
Yeah, just
Yes,
one
sir.
more question. Rick, we're gonna remove the cafeteria altogether, gonna tear it down, right?
Yes, sir. That's what it seems
So
like.
if they're gonna do anything with the rest of the school, to do any upgrades, it's gonna have to be abated for the entire, if you're gonna do any work there, you gotta get all the lead paint and everything,
Yes, sir, the rest of the project would have to go through the same.
the same thing.
So that's something that, we haven't talked about, it's something we want to talk about, or we're gonna talk about that at a later date. Right now, we're just talking about the cafeteria.
Ms. Kamick was at the same meeting that I was at, and I thought it was vice versa.
I
They
thought it was
wanted to
everything
leave.
but the cafeteria.
I thought it was everything but the cafeteria.
So this,
Um,
we're just doing the cafeteria right now.
Yeah, but the reason that I bring this up is you're gonna look at the work order to see what we actually said to study, because I was under the impression as well as you were, and I'm sure Mr. Hart was at that meeting as well.
Right.
That they were wanting to keep the cafeteria, and I think, I feel like if we're going to clean it up, we need to clean it up. So if we're gonna abate it, maybe we abate it, and I don't know about leaving it. I don't wanna come back and have to tear it down
Well,
3
that
years
was
later.
gonna
But
be my question.
Um,
Once you start tearing down a portion of that building, does it obligate you to tear down the rest?
I don't think it does, because
Okay.
it's a single standing structure. Not attached to everything else, is that a correct statement?
Yeah, and you wouldn't have to abate this if you weren't gonna tear it down. The tear down is only the disposal of what's there.
If you're gonna use it for anything, then you're gonna have to,
They already use it. Yeah,
I was in that place at Curtin, so you're rotting and laying on the floor.
you were at a meeting in there too, weren't you? We've been inside.
Well,
I
we've
mean,
been in the cafeteria. It's
Do we own the
not
building?
ideal, but it was
We do
functional.
not own the building. They,
Ah.
the building through, it was a family, then it went to the school, and then it just is owned by Fair Oak Youth Center.
I'm sorry, I don't know that.
Truly is the one that owns the building.
Okay,
Fairview Center.
so we have no obligation.
We have no obligation to do
to
this.
say anything.
The only no, we have none. This was just
I'm on board with you.
Yeah.
I just wondered why you didn't wanna do the whole thing, but
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was not county property.
no, Mr. Hart had brought it up and it had been studied before, and the cost associated with it was what the concern was, that Ms. Kamick and myself had brought up about it's not just tearing down a building, it's some costs associated with that.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
but like I said, my thing is, the only reason to bid it out is we've got the study there, and you'll find what the work order was sent to Terracon. If they were supposed to do the other portion of the building, not just the cafeteria, then they need to do that properly. So, and then, but I think we can still bid the cafeteria and have an idea of what we're looking at.
Yes, sir, I think that's something we can do, just give us an idea of what we've got.
Okay, so we'll just let you proceed. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Ms. Kamick, I made the motion, and, so we got a, quick update on the Westminster Magistrate.
Yes, sir. If I understand it, they had a meeting here last month. And I understand they are in the process of securing architects to get a design for a building that they would like to have. I have talked with Mr. Carter. That was his plans. He is looking at maybe locating, this building, the magistrate's office, on the current location somewhere on the property where they're at now. I do not know what's the outcome of the meeting that they have. Mr. Carter and I have not talked since. I will say that Ms. Kamick, myself, and Ms. Price, we did look at some property. It's the old Community First Bank. It's 1.4 acres. The asking price for that we have. Mr. Carter kind of seemed he didn't like that idea either. He kind of liked the idea of being where he's at. Talking about putting up some type of metal building with a nice front, with a drive-through. That's something I'll follow up with him in the next couple of days to see exactly what their plans are and where they're at. So I did not know until today that it's a 9-month deal that the county has agreed to help them with this process. So we'll need to see what their timeline is, and I'll get that back with y'all also.
Yeah, at the wishes of council, we put a 9-month from the date of that. If Mr. Reed will do some digging on what that date that passed on the partnership, so we kind of have an idea on where we're headed with that, because we, regardless, I think February, March need to make a move on what we're going to do, and whether it's gonna be on that property or not. We got some concerns on that property, if what they're gonna do with the structure, and if they're gonna leave the structure, putting us on there. I don't know, I'm speaking out of hand here. If they went to sell that structure and we're on the back side of it, to me, the land is, maybe the person that would buy it would rather have all of that. So I think, to me, the location needs to be talked about a little bit more with Mr. Carter, just to kind of have an idea of where that is, because that property, to me, is not necessarily what I would consider where I would put a magistrate building. So there is some other avenues that we've discussed that you can talk to Mr. Carter about to see where that's going. We've researched the older buildings, and it's just the ability to bring them up to code. You're in $300,000 to $400,000 now. We budgeted 500, and that's what passed through as council. So if we decide to make that move, obviously that's the quickest move, is to renovate an existing structure that we so choose. I would think we need to have something in mind as we near that 9 months, and then make a decision as council on how to proceed from there, if we're not going to
I
have a
think
building.
Mr. Carter's concerns was the financial part of it. That's maybe why he decided to put it on the property that they own now. But I will follow up with Mr. Carter here in the next day or two, and I'll get back in touch with each one of you.
Okay. Any other questions regarding that? Any other business or anything we need to discuss?
Yeah, I'd like to bring one
Yes,
thing
sir.
up. I think all of us need to hold on to this study from Terracon, because this shows why there's so many, you see these, like they talk about Utica, Mill Hill, and all these little buildings. Well, why don't we just tear them down? This shows you it's not easy as just tearing it down. You got those old houses have got asbestos shingles, and the lead paint, especially back during the 40s and when they built them. And this tells you, this is why you say, why is that old building sitting there and falling down? It's like a Russian landmine. You can't disarm it. But if you go to fool with it, it's going to blow up. The Russian landmine will blow up. If you fool with the building, DHEC comes in, it blows you up. And this is just this study was very well done, and it's something we need to keep in the back of your mind. You say, well, we ought to tear that building down. Well, not so fast.
Is Terracon is on, they're one of our vendors, right?
Yes, sir, that is
we
correct,
have
they
them
are.
throughout. So if this, talk about blighted structures, that's huge. I mean, that's why I asked how many of these facilities exist out there that we're trying to do this on. I mean, the harboring crime is huge. I mean, that's the one thing, and that's, if we don't end out doing anything with Fair Play or some of those other structures, maybe we need to look at proper ways to control people getting into them, whether it's metal or just something, rather than them sitting open, because that's the issue that I see but DHEC doesn't help. It seems like the DHEC cost is what they mandate that we go through the abatement process. So maybe we can sit down and have I don't know who you would talk with DHEC to say, hey, this is what we're looking at as a county on getting rid of some of these structures. Can you give us some advice? And maybe we need to go up the ladder with our senators and representatives to say, hey, we want to clean up our county, but to tear down a building that would cost us $2,000 to really tear it down, because you can sneeze on some of them, they'll fall in, but it's costing us $10,000 for a study, $15,000 for an abatement, and I don't see. We'd be in $1 million.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely.
And
And one of the reasons the focus was on Fair Play to begin with was because of its close proximity to the Golden Corner Commerce Park. It was a real eyesore, taking people there to view the property, which is one reason why, regardless of who owned it, we wanted to clean that up.
an expansion of the fire, the
fire
fire
department
truck
there.
is the fire station they have, is not the
Yeah.
proper
We do-
size.
We do have DHEC in our own building here that we can start talking with these guys. And maybe they can tell us which direction to go and who to talk to next.
Would that be, is that a recommendation from,
Yeah, I'd
Okay.
say yes.
I'd second that recommendation, and then, all in favor?
Aye.
And I don't know where that goes, but at least it gives us an avenue of, as we move forward, because the cities have the ability to tear down structures better than we do, but the asbestos is still an issue. You know, I know that didn't pass through the House for the county to be able to go in and take property on condemned structures. This is condemned structures, not structures that people live in, or I guess they're supposed to, not supposed to be in. But that didn't pass through, but I understand that that's coming back through during this session, and they were putting some other teeth to it, so that we as a county can help tear down those. But the asbestos is the issue. I mean, that's huge cost, so.
You have the asbestos, the lead paint, and the caulking around the windows, that they used a PCB base, on the caulking. And I showed Etta on the, where I started out in James Island. You look it up, 2 Conifer Street. It had grown up bushes, trees, there. The old house I bought was built in 1940. Well, I moved out, I sold it, another guy got it, and then Hugo come along, knocked a hole in the roof. They can't get a permit because of asbestos shingles and lead paint on the windows. And, you look on the internet, the land is, what was $325,000 for a little old lot. You can't even see where it's all grown up bushes and trees, nobody wants to touch it. It's just sitting there. And that's the problem.
Yeah, and maybe that's something that we need to write in for, you know, our help with our representatives and to talk about those issues, because several counties are burning them and paying the fine. And we discussed that today, and I'm not willing to do that. I'd rather not break the law. I'd rather not put the asbestos in the air either. And I think, you know, what we're trying to do is proper, but it's slow moving. But how many times do we have citizens come up here and talk about bad structures? So, anything else for today? Motion to adjourn?
So move.
Thank you.